every single week, I always say we have a very special program. I know you're probably saying, okay, she's saying it again, another special program. But what can I tell you? I think all my programs are very special. But I think in particular, you'll be very interested in standing by and sticking with us because we have this distinctive, soulful voice. Well, you probably say, well, we know that's not Nikki's voice. But whose is it? Well, that's the treat we have for you this evening. The voice behind the scenes. The voice in front of the scenes at a lot of times. The person who is responsible for the programming here on Art Beat of Harlem and on WHCR and, Harlem Community Radio itself is Mr. Frank Allan. I know a lot of you are familiar with him through the Jazz in the Morning show that comes on Monday through Friday. So not only is he the very distinctive and soulful voice that you hear, but he is the person, again, who is behind a lot of the programs that you hear on WHCR. So we're going to be speaking with him today. And I think this is a good opportunity for those of you who are interested in radio, who want to know what it takes to be a producer, a DJ, or just in the media field to listen to us this evening and find out a lot about what it takes, because a lot of people think it's just about coming in on and sitting behind a microphone and just talking, but it's not. It's a lot to radio, a lot to putting on a program. And I have to say, I am very pleased to have Mr. Frank Allan in the studio with us this evening. So without any further ado, Frank, how you doing?
Hi, Nikki. How you doing?
Okay. Thank you for giving us your Sunday evening. I mean, because I know that you're going to be right back here in another, not even 10 hours, I think, to come on your 6 o'clock program. So Thank you for being here at a time that I know you would normally want to rest up for.
Well, so what? You interrupted my dinner. So what? What is it? What does it matter? Who cares, right?
That's it. See, that's what happens. That's what they say. That's the cost of being the boss.
That's the cost. Well, I don't think I put it that way. But.
Okay. But Frank, I mean, first of all, I have to say... Oh,
by the way, your introduction was very nice. I appreciate it. But you forgot to put the good-looking part in there.
Excuse me. See, that was the part I was going to interweave that through the whole show. Every other word. At about 10 after 9, it's going to start talking with the good-looking. It's going to be subliminal and stuff like that. But Frank, I've never said this to you, and I don't even know if you remember this, because about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I called up WHCR to find out who I would speak to in order to do some poetry, my own poetry on WHCR. Now, for some reason, what came out of my mouth was, who would I speak to in order to put together a show about poetry and the arts? And I spoke to Mr. Frank Allan. And Frank, I don't know what was happening during that morning for you, but you said, hey, that's an interesting idea. And you gave me information who to speak to, and you helped me to get in contact with the person to make this dream a reality for me. Me coming in with no radio background, no experience in this, and you were very, very helpful to me. Again, just calling up in random and asking a question that I was not prepared to ask. I was, like I said, just going to ask about doing a reading, and something totally different came out of my mouth. But you picked up the phone and gave me a lot of encouragement and told me, talk to so-and-so and do this, do that. And I have to publicly thank you. That was almost 3.5, 4 years ago that you did that. And because of your encouragement and you helping me, giving me the right people to talk to, and kind of walking me through all this, Art Beat of Harlem is a reality. So I want to take this opportunity over the air to thank you, Frank, for, helping to give me this opportunity to be here and let a lot of very talented artists come on Art Beat of Harlem to show what it is that they can do and do so well. So, thanks, Frank.
Can I borrow your handkerchief? Unfortunately, I don't remember that. I don't remember that, Nikki, because that, like you said, that was like a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
And I've only been the program director at this station for 4 years. I think in August 31st, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
August 31st, it'll be 4 years. But if I told you that sounded like a good idea, maybe it was, because you know, most of the times when people call me and they are seeking an on-the-air position at this radio station, well, the first thing everyone wants to be is a DJ. DJs, I guess you can find anywhere, but to get some meaningful programs such as Art Beat of Harlem, or maybe like programs like The Communicators and programs like that, no one really wants to touch that kind of a program. Everyone wants to hide behind records. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Right, yeah. But
spinning records it's simple. I mean, anyone can do that. I mean, but to lay down some concrete program with some concrete information, it's hard to come by. So when you brought that to my attention, I found it to be a good idea. As a matter of fact, when someone even calls me today and want to pursue a DJ position, anything sounds good to me.
Okay. Really. And why is that, Frank?
Well, it's like I said, I'm looking at this particular point in time, I'm looking for something a little more than music, although I think music is very important to what we do here at WHCR. As you know, we have a variety of all kinds of music here, you know, as much as we can put on the radio. But I think at this particular point in time, we have enough music to hold us. So now what I'm looking for is enough program to communicate to the listening public, because listen to what we're saying. We're saying Harlem Community Radio. What Harlem Community Radio means is that this is a radio station in the community of Harlem, and a community radio station is not served by not only music, is also served by educational programs, community-minded programs, something that the community could feed on to take them to the next day. And not only that, we give information about what goes on in the community, information outside of the community or nearest to the community. And I think that's very important. So I think that, you know, not that I'm knocking the fact that, okay, come on in, DJs, you know, I mean, they're always going to be around, but I think I'm gearing myself more to that kind of radio right now.
It sounds good. And we're definitely going to talk more in depth about the programming here on WHCR. And yes, Frank, because you do wear many hats and you are extremely busy.
I got a lot of heads. I told you this show is going to be a hit. Didn't I tell you that?
Oh,
it's going to be all right. We're going to be all right. And we got 45 minutes to go.
That's it. The time that I did call again was probably a couple of months after you had gotten yourself in the station and had so much to do. So that's why I said I don't think you may remember, but of course it's something that I will forget, this conversation that I had with you 3.5 to 4 years ago. Which brings me back because, like I said earlier, a lot of people think that getting on the air is nothing more than just, I can talk. Hey, I can talk. I can sound good. And people tell me I have a deep voice. And people tell me I have a sexy voice. And so and so and so. And it's not that. So let's just bring it on home to those people who are out there in the listening audience and who are interested in doing radio. Let's talk about the first aspect of it, which helps to bring programming to WHCR and other radio stations. What is the responsibility of a program director? And also, let's talk about what your radio background is so that people could see it's not an overnight thing. You know, for anyone, I myself can attest to fumbling and bumbling for the first couple of months or maybe even a year since when I first started. So let's talk about your background and also the responsibilities of a program director.
No, how far do you want to go back? I'm 22 years. I think it's 23 years. In September it's going to be 23 years.
Oh, I thought you said you were 23 years old. That's
yeah, I am 23 years.
Sorry,
I was there. I was in ever since I was a kid.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people ask the question, you know, how that's always a question. It's hard to answer in a way because there's different ways to approach that question. I mean, how do you get in radio? Okay, I can only say what it takes to be a DJ is, first of all, the utmost, Nikki, and this is what we all forget to elaborate on, is education. Okay. I mean, education is the most important thing. I wouldn't even go as far as saying go for it until you get that education. And just in case we're having a lot of young people who are listening today, it's very important because you cannot be a news announcer, you cannot be a disc jockey or radio personality, if you will, or even host a show such as Odd Beat of Harlem without the knowledge of what you do. Because now, and when it comes down to it, you have to know how to read. If you do a talk radio program, you have to know issues. You have to stay on top of issues. You have to stay on top of all the publications. Record people, DJs have to stay on top of trades.
Right.
Well, I think my suggestion is to someone who wants to break into this business is, first of all, education. Now, going to college is a very, very good idea, especially today.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And if you get involved in it, because most colleges have radio stations, and the best way to break into it is through the college circuit.
Oh, okay.
Think of the money that you can save and learn and get the same knowledge of radio technology, because you won't learn the business until after you get out there. But think of all the money you can save by learning let's say, learning how to run a control board, or learning voice diction and elocution, and that would cost you thousands of dollars per year.
Right, yeah.
You pay your tuition to college, but at the same time, there are a lot of good things available, like the radio station. So you join a radio station club, hang out with a person that's very knowledgeable and very serious about what he's doing. That's where you learn best, and not only learn how to be a G. I wouldn't suggest anyone to elaborate on being a disc jockey only. Get it all. Get into sales, get into how to edit, get into how to maybe even news. Even if you're not a news person, at least try to gear yourself somewhere along the line, because somewhere along the line is going to hit you. Somewhere along the line is going to hit you. And because once you get out on the job circuit and you start making your calls, and you hit the program director, and the program director will say, well, I don't have a job. I'm not looking for a DJ. What I'm looking for right now is a news person, or maybe I'm looking for a production supervisor or something. And then you have all that under the belt. You say, well, okay, I don't have a DJ job, but I know how to do production. And that's the best way I can tell you how to break in.
And the thing is also getting your foot in the door.
Getting your foot in the door is, if you can get your foot in the door. And it's not impossible. And I got to tell you, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's very difficult. Even more difficult today, because the jobs are scarce. Right,
because the television, movies, and cable industry is taking over more. But that leads us to, what information we would love to hear, because we know that you've been doing this for a while. How was it that you got your break, and what has been your, climb in the ranks, so to speak?
You mean where I got started?
Yes. How did you get started?
All right. I attended City College, and there's a station down the hallway. We can say WHCR, because that's part of the institution.
Right.
They had in those years, the radio station was over at Finley, and those who are listening may not know what I'm talking about. But the Finley Student Center of City College was like at the South Campus. And this campus was one time a real huge campus, and I joined the radio station there, and Nikki, I got to tell you, it's difficult enough to even try, but to try to break down the barriers to even get your foot in the door is difficult. As far as learning production and things, I had to look over shoulders, because no one took the time to say, Frank, this is how it's edited, or this is how this is done, or this is how this is done. The farthest I've gotten in college radio was I sat down on one side of the glass. Back in those days, we had engineers, and the engineer was on the other side of the glass. That was my entire education on radio, and that's what I was limited to at that time.
Right, yeah.
And I said, well, I wanted more than that. I just didn't want to be a guy that just walks in here, sit behind a mic, and talk. Okay, so here's a minute. Okay, I have a good voice. Do you remember
what show you were doing? Do you remember what type of show?
Yeah, at that time, I was doing an R&B show.
Really?
Yeah, and those were the days when radio was high key, and the guy, you know, he gets up in the morning and, you know, or whatever, because I was doing mid mornings at the time, come on, 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was high key, and it was like real high key, and this is the Boss 10 top 10 radio in New York, you know, and you know, but you know, as time goes on, you know, they don't do radio except maybe for CBS FM. They do that kind of radio because people are still buying into that. That's a good format for that, you know, if you like that.
And it's called, what did you say, high key?
It's high key. It was high up tempo, and you know, and I was a fast talker. I mean, I have tapes at home that I'm so embarrassed to even listen to, and let alone play for anyone else.
I can imagine.
You know?
Those early days.
Yeah, the
big
early
afro
days.
and the collar and all that. And Frank sitting in his platform shoes and
well, that was the 70s. That was the 70s, and then that's when I turned to be a disco disc jockey.
Oh,
you know,
boy.
With the John Travolta suit, and the white suit, the vest. I had a ball back then. But that was high key radio that we were doing like that. That was called, I guess you could call it top 40 radio, top 40 R&B radio. And so, okay, getting back to the preparation of it, so I had to continue sneaking into production room with the big guys who knew it all, and kind of looked over their shoulder and see, because they didn't want to sit me down and teach me, so I looked over the shoulder, and I got that. So every day I would do a little bit more. Then I would go into the newsroom and see how they would edit news, you know, what it took to prepare news, and I stayed there as long as I could to gather that information for myself, taking notes down.
Right.
No one knew. No one knew. They just thought I was just standing there.
Yeah.
You know. But no one knew it. I was taking mental notes and you know, I had my little under my jacket, a little pen or something, you know, writing it down. And then I learned. I went into the office. I hung out in the offices. All right, and looked over the shoulder of the secretary. All right. But she must have thought that I was in love with her because I was over her all the time. But it wasn't even about that.
I love it.
So, and then I went into the record library. And learn how to catalog.
Now, what is catalog? Because a lot of we've been throwing around a lot of terminology.
Cataloging is no more than getting the records and maybe like an alphabetical order or color coding them, so you can know the difference between let's say you have a section for R&B, a section for rock, a section for reggae, you know, so forth and so on. Okay. So I learned how to do that, and so many other things. So,
but I mean that what you did is very, very ingenious and innovative. Yeah. Which I don't know how many people will be able to do that today, with security being what it is, and all that other stuff. Well, but thank God you had that opportunity.
Well, today I think it's very important for one to try to hook up with a person that knows, and a person that's going to, you know, like be, because I'm always willing to pass on what I know to anyone, because I'm not going to be here forever. Right. You know, you're not going to be here forever, right? Well, I mean, we'll be here for a long time, but I mean, let's face it. I didn't
plan on going nowhere.
Well, I don't plan to go anywhere either, but I personally don't want to be a 50-year-old disc jockey. You know, I would like to do other things, but but there's someone that's going to be behind me, and they're going to come to me and they say, well, you know, how is this? I would like to be the guy to say, well, with pleasure, here's what I have. Right. All right. Yeah. You take this. I can't sit down for a whole 4 hours and explain, because it doesn't take that. You cannot jam 22 years of experience down someone's throat. Right. So you would have to say, here's a package for you. You know, start with this. All right. This will get you there. This will get you to a certain plateau, and then you move on. And then the advice is to start hanging around with people who are in radio. If you know, do that. Right. How, you know, here's another thing, Nikki. When I started in radio, I was hanging around with people in radio. You know what I used to do? What? I was always in love with the people at WWRL. Oh, who was it? In the early years. Who was it? In the early years. Yes, I was always in love with those people. Yes. All right. And I used to always go to the station, and no one knew who I was. I used to go out. I used to sneak in there and in the lobby, right? And you could see the pictures of all the DJs on the wall, you know, like we have.
Right, we have sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we're going to renovation right now.
Yeah.
All right, and it was just fascinating. Then I got a chance to meet the program director.
Do you remember who
his name was Jerry Bolden. Jerry Bolden was his name at the time, right? And they had a thing called the WWRL Youth Congress, all right? And this is even before I started college radio. So the WWRL Youth Congress had a radio show that was broadcast every week, all right? It was a half-hour radio show. And this guy, I never forget his name, Wayne Johnson, took me in. And we in the Congress, and then it was just like, to me, it was just like a hangout thing after school.
Right, yeah.
And after school, I used to go there, and recording day was always on a Tuesday. Wayne used to host it, and we used to be like the guest or the co-host or whatever it is. And the idea was just getting on the air, right?
Right, yeah.
Then Wayne came to me one day. He says, listen, he says, I don't really have time to really host this show because I'm employed here and I have to do other things, you know, but I will be taking over the Youth Congress. I will be, you know, working close to the Youth Congress. Did you ever think about getting in radio? I said, now that you mention it, yeah.
Yeah.
So he says, well, have you ever done it before? I said, no, but I always wanted to do it. He says, well, why don't you host one show? Let's see how you work out, and then we'll take it from there.
Oh my God! We're here on WHCR talking to Mr. Frank Allan, who is the program director, and we're learning about his background and what he can bring to you out there who are interested in being in radio. And this is just new. I mean, this is education for me also, because it's always wonderful to learn more and more about the people that you work with. Frank, do you remember what your first station was, your first official capacity as an on-air person, what station it was? Because I know you work with several radio stations, which we definitely want to hear.
Wow.
Which ones?
I got to search my memory banks. The WWRL was the first. The very first, because I was getting ready to say, you know, when I got that first piece of experience, that was the first. It was unbelievable because it was a dream that I had since I was a teenager. And I knew then, I was fascinated by radio when I was a teenager. But WWRL had to be, I would have to say that was the very first piece of a little small piece, but a piece of radio that got me off. Because then after recording time was over, and I went and told my friends, I'm going to be on WWRL, I'm going to listen. And back in those days, WWRL was the station to listen to.
It sure was.
It was the station to listen to, and if you listen to anything other than that, you were a wimp.
Yes, I remember to think WABC and RL. I mean, it seemed like those were the only two stations that people were really listening to, depending on what kind of music you were into.
Absolutely,
or
but
whatever.
you know something. Where I grew up, right? I lived in the projects, and where I grew up, the guys that I hung out with, if you didn't listen to anything other than that, you were a chump. You were no good.
All right.
But in solitude, I'd listen to WABC and all of those other top 40 radio stations because I did like the Beatles. Yeah. I did like the Stones. Yeah. And all of those top 40 groups, I did like them.
Yeah, and
I had to listen in solitude.
That station, Light FM.
Light FM.
It's all about that us closet.
That's right. That's right.
People.
Absolutely.
It draws the audience from people like ourselves who listen to different types of music. Now, RL was definitely, that's the soul and everything like that.
That was a station.
But you couldn't help but know about, you know, the music that WABC was playing because that was part of still. I mean, no matter what color, that was still part of our, you know, culture. Yeah. This pop and this rock and roll and all that other stuff.
I would never forget it. I think I owe, and I can't find Wayne today, but I really owe him. Yes. You know, for that little break right there. You know, and you never know the person that's going to give you the break. You never know who that's going to be. Now, this guy was not a radio person. Right. He was just working. He was an employee that just happened to be in charge of a group. that happened to have a radio show, which he had hosted in the beginning and passed it on because he really didn't want to do it anyway.
Right, yeah.
And here I am. I came along, and he didn't know that I was interested in that kind of thing, and he just gave me the shot. He almost like pushed me to it, you know. And by the way, Nikki, the first program that we did was a drama show when I hosted it.
You're kidding.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
It was a drama show. And you know something, when we did it, it was no script. You know, because we didn't know what to do.
Right,
It was no script. It was like just live radio. Just go for it.
Oh, my God.
And it came out well.
Drama?
It was drama.
That's a whole drama and not knowing what you're going to say.
Yeah, we were just going for it. And it was like a on the air play, and we were just going for it. And it was fun. And I wish I had a tape. I had a tape of it. Well, he promised me a tape, but I never got it. So I wish I had it.
I'm sure 20 years later he's probably looking for you.
Yeah, well, I don't, you know.
So what happened from there? Do you remember what the next station?
Yeah, well, then from there, then I took it to college, and then right there I said, well, I knew that I could do it then because, you know, in college radio, these guys had great voices, right? And I said, I don't know how I can compete with these guys, you know. And I said to myself, hey, you know, what are you worried about? You're human, they're human. You're just as good as anyone else. And if you don't make it, that means you try something else. So I did, and I did it as an announcer. Like I said, I made it. And then I just blossomed. And then and then from there, Nikki, we had WCCR connected with so many big things. We were in connection with WCBS AM. We were in connection with WPAT.
Wow.
In connection with WOR that turned to WXLO, which is now KISS FM. And we were connected with all those stations. And WOR had a space on Sunday that they donated to City College Radio. Right? And they said, well, you guys could do anything you want with us. So we called it College Forum. And that was a spot that any of us who were members of WCCR at the time could come up with a guest and host a show. And I grabbed as many guests as I could and try to get in there as many weeks as I could. And just to get it on resume, and that was a lucky break because that doesn't happen every day.
It sure doesn't
happen every day.
It sure doesn't.
And then on, I went to let's see. Okay, we're talking after college. I went over to WNYE. All right.
Now, WNYE, is that also a television?
Yeah, it's a television station. It's Channel 25.
Okay. And it has a radio?
Yeah, they have a radio station, which at that time, which is owned by the Board of Education. I think they sold that, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The Board of Education had it. And in the wintertime, they donated to Youth in Action. At the time, Youth in Action was one of those programs that maybe you could work summer jobs and things like that for the youth. Youth in Action, and they called it Youth in Action Radio. All right. In the wintertime, they put us on in the evening, and in the summertime, they put us on during the day. So I was there. I was a fill-in whatever I was, wherever I had to be.
Yeah.
And I was a fill-in guy there. And so I did that for maybe about 3 months or so. And this guy named Duke Baldwin, I don't know if you remember this guy. Duke Baldwin was... he wasn't really a radio personality, but he was one of those struggling radio personalities. He did voiceovers, and he had this old saying. He used to do yabba dabba do, how boot that, mama, lay it on me, you know. And we met. He came to the station, and he saw me, and then he stayed there for a while, and then he went over to the station called WBNX, which, of course, over the years changed their call letters, and he took me with him. So I was co-hosting with him.
Boy.
I was reading scripts, commercials for him. He says, now we're going to go over to Frank Allan, and he's got this word. We'll be back. Pause for cause, you know.
Wow.
And so I would read the commercial copy, and then I would say, okay, now back to you, Duke. Let's have it, you know. and then you know, then we would do that like every night, you know.
Yeah.
That lasted for about 3 months, and then I went over to we're going to 1970. 5 now. I go over to the station in Long Branch, New Jersey, WRLB, which is now a station called Seaview 107. It's out in Long Branch on the Jersey Shore. I had a lot of fun over there.
Wow.
It was fun, you know.
What type of programming was it?
I did the same. I stayed so up until the 1970s then that's when the disco thing came in.
No, that is definitely a a change and stuff. And we're going to take a pause for the cause, of course, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk to Frank Allan more about his career. So, please don't leave us. We'll be right back with Mr. Frank Allan, the program director for WHCR, and some more informative information, if you will. Be right back. Talking to Mr. Frank Allan, who is the program director here on WHCR. And when we say Harlem Community Radio, Frank, doesn't it surprise you to know that a lot of people don't know that Harlem has its own radio station?
Well, it not only surprises me, but it kind of disappoints me because, we've been here since 1986. We've been on the air since 1986. And maybe not on a collective basis, but certainly on an individual basis, like the individual programmers. They go out and they do all the legwork, and let the people know that, there's such a radio station. We have a show, we have an art show, we have a jazz show, we have, whatever. Have a lot of Latin community programming. And it's, when you're working with a station and you first of all, we're low in manpower here. All right, as far as the offices go, and then everything is like really done. I'm really doing a lot of things literally by myself. Not that I'm complaining about it. I would like to have the assistance of someone, which I had at one time, but things happen, and then you have to move on to greener pastures and things like that. But we're working on a lot of things. We're presently working on a campaign, and I may say this prematurely, but we were talking about it, and it sounds official that we are going to be working on more funds. And I could safely say this because I have spoken to the dean of the school, our general manager. We got together and we talked about fundraising, so he certainly agreed to it. And so that's one of the things we're going to be working on, fundraising to expand. As you already know, we already have a news department now.
Yes, exciting, very
and we
exciting.
We just gained access to another little room that we expand that we're going to use as our newsroom. I originally wanted to use it as my personal office, but I think there's certain things are more important than others, and I certainly think that that this news department that we're developing is right now my forte and something that I really want to work with closely, and I'm kind of excited about it too.
This is so excited. What was it that brought about the news department?
We needed more. We needed more than, as I stated earlier, we play the music here. And when we first got here, Nikki, it was all music. It was wall-to-wall music.
Right,
and when the station first started, it was all jazz. And we needed more than that.
Yes.
So when I was hired as program director, I said, we need more than jazz. I love jazz.
Yes.
I said, we need a little more than that. I mean, Harlem Community is not just jazz. I mean, it's Latin music. It's African music. It's I like light music.
Yes.
And I'm certainly not afraid to put that kind of music on this radio station. If I could find the right kind of person to do it. Everyone says that I should do it because I have the voice for that kind of thing. But I'm stuck with jazz right now.
No, but jazz and Frank Allan go hand in hand.
Well, thanks. But I also like to think of myself as a person that can do anything he wants to do. You put me on a country western station, I'll go for it.
All right.
I would do that. So now that we got all the music that we need, now I want to get all the essential programs that we need. And news is an essential part of radio.
Yes.
You have to know what's happening out there, because it's if there's anything I can't stand is uninformed people, man.
Right.
That don't know what's happening. When you wake up, every time I wake up in the morning, it's like I got to know what's happening before I go out there, because if I walk out my door, I don't know if there's a stalker out there, and believe me, I get them.
I hear that. Oh boy. Now, Frank, you've been doing this show for how long?
4 years now.
4 years.
Well, I've been doing jazz in the morning for 4 years, but I was here prior doing some morning, mid-morning shows and afternoon shows. I was kind of swinging back then in the early days.
All right. And I know that there are a couple of people who I've spoken to is like, oh, who's that morning person? Because I listen to him faithfully, and I think that is such a blessing, because, of course, there are so many other radio stations for, them to listen to. You know, you
right.
have the BLS, RL, and all that other stuff like that. That's in the morning, okay? But you have, definitely a following. Why don't you tell us what we can expect to hear from you, Jazz in the Morning, Frank Allan?
In the morning is like we give the information of jazz and traffic and all of that stuff, so forth, the regular morning thing.
Frank, I got to tell you, I really appreciate you being here, talking about what it is that you do and done and will be doing, and we want you to continue to keep listening.
No, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for inviting me, because it's always good every once in a while to be at the other end.
Yes.
You know, I like to present, but I also like...
I thought you were talking about being a horse. Okay, so you're talking about something else. Okay, okay, all right. You're talking about being on the radio. Okay, I get confused sometimes.
That's terrible.
Oh boy, no, we're just glad to have you here and appreciate you taking your time, Frank. We will be listening to you tomorrow, 6 a.m.
If you allow me to go home and get some sleep, I will be here.
There's no such thing as sleep for the program director and stuff. Let's all call in, write in. Do not let Frank sleep ever. But Frank, thanks for being here, and peace and blessings.